maybe now is a good leeway to ask you about the company, about Wonderground, about your creations, actually, since we started speaking about creation. So maybe let's speak about the company you created, with who you created it. Maybe you can tell us about other people in the team, and when you established the company, and a little bit about the creations.
Like the company, it started right before COVID, almost, no, like 2019.
Yeah, I mean, officially, the company basically we started to collaborate. As soon as we met, we started to kind of, we didn't have any work together. We were dancing in the same project, but we were kind of basically creating together, so it was very natural for us. And then we basically, both of us came to the decision together that we're very happy with this collaboration. And both of us also are in a similar place of, after dancing for so many years for other people, we're happy to only dance our own creations.
And like to create the company, it was more like none of us wanted to have our names as the company. So we created like a name that will like represent us, together with Brechte Randa, which is like a friend, but also like the person that it helped us with the production, distribution, but also like thinking about the project, not just in the creation aspect, but also social values, what we stand for.
Espera. Wait a moment. There was two things. We're switching roles now. You're now with the mess and I'm with the organization.
That's good. You're balancing. That's good. That's good. Very good.
No, so
non-toxic. You're creating a non-toxic environment. Very good.
No, because I think just before the name, something about the Brechtje, because so we started from collaborating artistically, and we started doing things, small gigs, improvisation, a little bit of creation, a little bit of teaching, and then we decided to put it together. And we knew that if we want to make it something that is coherent with our lives, we have to share it with another person, because otherwise, in the moment that things don't work so well, then it will fall on the relationship. We need another partner, so we have more space, like a wider base to build it wherever it goes. And Brechtje, she's a Dutch person, very interesting, very curious, also very versatile in her skills and her education. And she lives here in Barcelona, and she came, actually we met her when she came to one of our workshops. So the connection was very, very natural. And we work very closely with her on all the company things. And I think that the name, which is kind of like, there is something that is a bit, again, like before Brechtje came, it was just Tom and Rosé, and then together there's Wonderground, because ideally the company is supposed to really give you a ground to wonder, which that's, in our idea, the most powerful experience of art. It gives you a space, an experience, a sound, an image, a ground that you can wonder about things. And also here, in English,
there's a wordplay as well.
There's a really nice wordplay, the wonder and the wonder, which is.
Also, we were thinking about, okay, what's the name? Because you need to take care of names, because sometimes they become heavy, or they become limiting, or you become like a slave of this name. So we were also like trying to find a name.
No, but that's a great name, because it has so much in it, Yeah. So much. There's the writing, there's, there's the wonder, there's the traveling, there's the wonder of it all, and there's the ground, of course, which is essential.
Very important.
There's a lot. And then there's the illusion of this allusion to the underground, which is, wow, okay, Alice in Wonderland, then Wonderland, everything is in that name. It's amazing. So how did you get to it?
To the name?
Yeah.
I think it was quite natural. Again, it was a kind of a love in first sight type of thing for us, because we were thinking about all the things that are again, like Rosé said, what inspires us, but on one hand, something that we feel that is not temporary inspiration. And then, in our workshop, whether it's partnering or dance or more acrobatics or more improvisation, we always talk about the relationship with the ground, because it's a relationship that the nourishing and the studying of this relationship, this is movement practice. So this was very clear. And then with the wonder, it's like kind of, I feel that it's because of this wordplay, it was also something that we felt that it's kind of a meeting, like the wonder and wonder, the wonder of thinking and
wishing
and
questioning,
traveling, questioning, traveling, and like with Wonderland, wonderful, like things that happen that are marvelous or unexpected or contain something that is extraordinary. And I think that also what was really nice is that back then we spoke, I think that we started bringing up, there's this a quote that is both as Antoine Saint-Exupéry, and I know also Wittgenstein, the philosopher, said something similar, but the most beautiful things are hidden from the eye. The most marvelous things is the things that we miss out every day. So there was something about this kind of idea of the ground being, all of these things, that we felt that it's something we can never get tired of. We can, like Rosé, it will never limit us. It will only
can only go deeper.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so tell us about what have you been doing with the company since its establishment? Your creations.
I mean, it's true that we started in COVID. So like the company with the name, it's like right before COVID, we had our kind of initiation.
Yeah, so, but you had this residency, the RISE residency that you did here in the studio. It was before COVID, I remember, just before. Just a week or two before everything started closing down. I remember you had some trouble with tickets you had for the States or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was just before, and you already performed that one, or were about to perform it.
We performed RISE a lot, because actually it was a good, before COVID, RISE is a street piece, and the outdoor and open air was in Spain. The outdoor performances basically never stopped in COVID. So we had multiple chances to perform it. It was never in the setup that we wanted because of social distancing and stuff like this, but we performed it a lot already. And also we got the chance to kind of speed up our creative process, because again, institutional work and being in the studio, just the two of us, was more comfortable and made more sense in the times of COVID. So I would say that I still, because of this situation that is not, COVID was basically to adapt. We didn't start from how we planned it would start. We had a bit more of kind of an idea of like, okay, we perform, we start to kind of use our connections to build our name. But instead of this, we have basically all the time adapting to circumstances. All of a sudden, festivals close the doors, we do it online, we do video. And again, so it's hard to say exactly what's the regular activity, because we didn't have yet regular activity. We performed a lot, we created a lot in this almost year and a half, but it's every time very adaptable to this situation of COVID.
I think like also for us, COVID in some way was a gift, because it's
not only for you, for many people,
right? It just frees us from obligations that sometimes you think that you have with the money, like you have, but like this situation basically leaves you with no choice but, okay, what I do within when all of this, it's gone. And then, it was me, Tom, we have a space in the house. We started to research. What happened if we put this light? What happened if I put this jacket and and like this, until it was like we had a bit of freedom here in Spain. So we could like rent a studio and yeah, I think we did like 3 months of research, and we started creating our our first duo for theater. So
Mm.
and yeah,
Beautiful. So tell us a little bit about the creations themselves, about Rise, about After the Rain.
Well, we had with Rising After the Rain, they both had turned into very long creations. Actually, After the Rain was the first thing we did together. And we did a very quick creation, and then we had to present something in a festival in the south of Italy. So it was 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks of work. We were invited to present. We didn't have anything, so we're like, okay, let's try. What we came up with was really nice. It contains very kind of a very the topic of After the Rain is basically like, you know, recovering from a big change in one's life. So it was kind of like this very interesting piece, like also to think about, and like how it is connected to our lives. And then we decided to switch because we wanted a little bit to wait with the setup of After the Rain that is quite ambitious as far as the lights and the stage. And we wanted to do something that doesn't have so much technical weight, that we can be more light with it to bring it everywhere. Then Rise started, which we're like, okay, so let's go to the street, which actually Rosé, she has a lot of street experience with creation and performing. And my street experience is more from my childhood in capoeira, which is also quite rich.
I would say Tom has more experience in the street than Rosé, but
but older. So it took him, you had to remind him.
Yes, that was the funny thing, you know, that we went into the street and like you see Tom with shoes, and it's like it's almost like his natural ground almost, you know. For me, I have a bit more like adaptation because I come from, you know, linoleum, nice wood floor, everything bouncy. You know?
But you won fancy prizes for your street creations in Catalonia. So
yeah, that's true.
So officially, you have more.
You are very cute, you two. You know that it's really nice. You know, I'm sitting here. I started recently this kind of acknowledgement corner in the community and on our Facebook page, where I compliment people about who they are and what they do. And you know, you're just doing it to each other all the time. It's really nice.
That's why it's not a toxic relationship.
Exactly. But it's so important. It's so important, isn't it? Yeah. And people forget all about it.
But for Rise, then the idea of the street was to give, like, you know, to bring to the street, because we saw that everything that is in the street, because there is, of course, a lot of street performance in the world, but it's a little bit too much about action and not so much about kind of poetics or about existential thing. You know, it's like kind of about highlights, because always the conception of the street is if you don't grab people's attention, they will not see you. And we wanted to fight this, to change this, to say, no, we can bring something that is, of course, in After the Rain, we have 1 hour and again, an ambitious lighting and setup. But here with the street, with something that passes more quickly, that has less tools, we can bring something that is meaningful, that is not just impressive. And what was nice in Rise is that this task proved itself much more difficult than we thought. You know, if you remember, we did a residency when we were there, and like we came here, COVID started, we still had performances. We finished these performances, we're like, it's not working. People still get our partnering, my acrobatics, Rosé's dancing, you know, like they still catch on the highlights, not on the meaning. So we changed the piece. We had in the summer a couple of gigs, different setup, you know. And again, people loved it, but for the wrong reasons. And for the wrong reasons for us, you know. And now, and that was, I think, what Rosé said also with the gift of COVID, that every time, instead of after a few performances, instead of having to go into traveling and teaching and doing again, we always had a chance to continue working after the performance. And now we had the really big festival here. I mean, 2 festivals in Catalonia that were part of both of them, and it takes street performances to different places in Catalonia. And we did another another month of work. And we felt that finally, after it's almost like 2 years of running with this, we found it. Like we finished the piece, and there was recently an article about the piece in some magazine, and they wrote exactly like
the things
the
that
themes
we
wanted to deal with.
Wow, fantastic!
Intimacy.
That's really great.
Yeah. So this was very interesting because we took it as a light project, but it turned to be like a very, very interesting artistic struggle. If we see a problem, we think we can solve it just by seeing it and making something, and it proved to be very, very long process of kind of dealing with this issue. You want to add something?
No, it's also it's also quite amazing how other things that you do inform. Like I feel that with Rise, the fact that we enter into like creating a new piece, it informs also about this old piece, and then like you have two choices: you leave it, it's gone, it's like I'm not identify anymore with this piece, or you just go back and throw. And this is a very throw stuff like and move it around. And then I think that this is a very good exercise for something that you created, to just like shift it, throw it, new things. I think it was a very valuable process of like also not getting attached to material and understanding that it's a process, it's a trajectory, it's not a piece, it's not two pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but correct me if I'm wrong, you are like that. I mean, you don't detach yourselves from things completely. You do have a tendency to go deeper and deeper into things well, I know this from Tom. I don't know about After the Rain, but I guess it is like that, because if you say it started from something in 2018, we're now 2021, so that's 3 years process. And Rise, what you just told us about, and I know from Pilim very, very well that a part of the process of Pilim you were part of as well, Jose. So, you do have the tendency not to detach yourselves from things, from your creations, but to go deeper and to meet the challenges and to seek a way to be complete with them, which is interesting. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, there is something about, first of all, I think, and again, it's good. And I mean, it sounds, maybe some of the things that I'm saying are critical, but I think that it's more like, for art, there's a certain amount of critical thinking is very inspiring. But for example, in dance, there is a lot of this request from creators to create regularly things that are aesthetically similar and just get prettier and prettier, which you can think about if you want the parallel of this. In circus, for example, the whole point of choosing a discipline is basically this. It's like, let's figure out what you do good, what you look the best doing, not what you enjoy the most, what you look the best doing. And let's exploit it little by little. And every time we show it, it's a little bit more exploited. And there is a point behind this, because it's supposedly say like, okay, you stick with something, but there's another option of going in depth. And this is the option of like, to have with yourself a question or a desire that you feel that in the creation process you fill up. You don't answer, but you're like coming to peace with it. And this is usually something that takes more time than like you're doing a yearly aesthetic, at 2-3 months, boom, it looks like it looks last year, but a little bit better. Let's finish it and move on.
Yeah, well, the one is going deeper. The other one is probably perfecting on an aesthetic level. It's just,
Exactly, aesthetic refinement.
Yeah.
And we're not interested in aesthetic refinement in that sense. So what it creates is that, like, we were ready to finish Rise after 2.5 months, but we didn't feel at peace with it. And now we do feel at peace. We don't, now every time we have a gig, there's no more creation. It's like the days we need to prepare for it. But we were running with the piece, we were selling the piece, and we're feeling this desire is not, is not at peace. And I think this ability to listen to yourself, to say like, okay, people like what I do, people buy it, but I'm not happy with it. It's not not happy with it because it's not good enough, not happy with it because it doesn't speak to the desire that created it.
Yeah, it's a question of integrity, artistic integrity. Yeah.
Yes, you
No, I'm.
you could say.
Was very beautiful.
Which one?
The desire that make you create it. it's a nice circle. It's very nice.
Yeah.
And and then what happens? That you don't know when the creations will end. Basically, that's the But we also
do they end? That's the question. Do they end at all? Do they end?
So
I mean, they always evolve. Even after you think you've completed it, they evolve with the audience, of course, every time you present.
Absolutely, but you need to come to the point and say, like, I finished. Like, it needs an end for the sake of continuity. Needs endings, I believe. So
yeah, you need to continue to other creations as well.
You have to say, okay,
I mean, you can dedicate your whole life to one creation, but I don't think for you it would work, would it?
No, I think like this question that you place, it's an interesting one that we are also been dealing with it. Like Thomas asked me, like, are you able to finish? And I'm like, I'm like, yes, like things evolve and continue, but like our role, for example, it gives us a very nice chance as creators and performers. I do feel that as a creator, the piece, it finishes. And then like the performers, like the embodying of the piece, it's what makes the piece also growing, and also the audience, that because again, it's like a communicative act.
Yeah.
So, there is like there is an ending, and then there is a birth, and you are at peace at this like birth, and then
there's the growing up of the piece. Yeah. And that's interesting. And then there's the question of repertory. It becomes part of your repertory, and one day you may transmit it to some other couple of dancers that would perform it. No, so then it would have another life, another reincarnation.
Yeah. I still didn't think about this transferring. Like what I did experience is like creating something for others, like other dancers, and being outside, which is like the closest that I've been to transferring. And I really enjoyed this position also. It's just that I still want to
perform.
I want to dance.
Of course. You're a great performer, so good for us. But in circus, there is a lot of contemporary circus. There's a lot of talk about the repertory of circus and the redoing of repertory, because there's this concept of us older generation contemporary circus artists that it's funny to call it old, but contemporary circus is already more than 50 years old. So there are creations that were breakthrough creations in contemporary circus that changed the way circus is looked at, and carved the way of circus as an artistic form of its own, and that are now being transmitted to, for example, graduating classes in circus schools in order to keep the repertory and to keep the historic cultural trace of contemporary circus in time, which is a very important thing for an art form, so it's something to think about for a company as well, as a company, if you form a company sometime in the future. And this is maybe the place for the question that I had about Wonderground and what your aspirations for it may be. I mean, where do you aspire to take this venture?
Aspirations in what sense? In like what?
In any sense, do you have any? Let's start from that. Do you have any aspirations for the company? Do you have any things that you're doing now in the company that you wish in a few years will be different? I mean, what do you tell me?
I think that, for example, this, the idea of still being inspired and happy to create in different mediums and different formats, this is the biggest aspiration, like to have fulfillment and happiness from both changing, adapting to circumstances, and still being with our integrity and our truth as we come to the different circumstances. In this last year, so we had Rise, which is a street duo. We had After the Rain, which, even though we didn't premiere, we had a lot of performances. It's premiere mostly on a political term, but we had a lot of long residencies that ended up with a performance. We created a piece for 20 dancers in SID, in Salzburg, that was called A Story of Spirit. And we did a couple of more improvised performances. So the possibility of us to kind of go through all of this range of different ways of doing and different ways of creating, and again, and as the year go on, our interest grows in creating in other formats. Rosanna with the art, with the ephemeral architecture and the design,
installation,
me with sculpting and painting. So we want to continue expanding our possibility to exhibit creations and to communicate with different formats and mediums. Before we did SEED with these 20 dancers, we're talking about when we're not sure it's for us to be outside and to command such a big situation. But then we came and we found our way to bring our integrity into the situation. So next year we have a commission for another duo, which is also something we didn't do. 2 older dancers that they bring us to kind of direct their duo in Finland.
In the gallery.
We have we have a commission for improvisation in a gallery in Paris.
Oh, nice.
So this thing, we hope that it will continue, that we'll continue to have the possibility to adapt and bring I really like that you used the integrity, bring the integrity of Wonderground to different mediums and different formats. So I think this is for me an aspiration.
Yeah. Also, I'm gonna tell you something, Orit. I think that like the idea of success that at least like there is, or that I perceived, or that I carry with me, which is like this thing of growing all the time, like growing bigger in numbers, in performers, in budget, in obligations, in responsibilities. Like I'm not sure that I'm not at peace with it. I'm really not sure if I want to really be there and at what cost. Like for me, the biggest question is at what cost. When creation starts being like something that you need to make regularly to pay salaries, to fulfill, but subsidize and I'm a bit scared of this. Like, or at least I want to arrive like in some sort of my own terms. It's a bit idealistic.
It's tricky.
It's very
well. We have a lot of experience with this in Israel because there's no funding, and then when there is some funding, or for example, in the circus community in Israel, there's been talk for the past 10 years about uniting, getting into a union, so we will have our rights in front of the Ministry of Culture. But that's a very frightening thing, because how do you unite people that are so different, so many different approaches, so many different ways of living and doing circus? It's very, very complicated.
Yeah.
So that's I understand this fear of institutionalization and speaking to
fear of success. No, like there is something that
do you have a fear of success?
No, I don't have a fear of success. But
I'm not sure if it's that.
No, but something that Tom told me in the beginning, and it really stuck with me. It's like people prepare themselves for failure, especially in art, because this is like there is this kind of understand. It's hard. A lot of people. It's like really a niche in society. What is it for? All of this. So people prepare,
especially in the past year and a half. Yeah.
Yes. So people prepares for failure, but people doesn't prepare for success. And this is what I mean. Like I'm not afraid of being successful, but I want to be like prepared.
Yeah,
And
you
in
want to
that
be
sense,
prepared and you want to be successful on your own terms. That was, you said it in a very, very clear way.
yeah,
You don't want outside triggers, like we said before, to dictate and to how to say, to hinder your integrity.
yeah. Because I think also, like, at least for me, the art expression, or what makes me like going into the studio, it's something that it really triggers me. I have a conflict, I have a pain, I have, it's something that I need to talk about it, to express it. This is like the first, and this is very valuable. This is mine, you know.
Yeah.
Then there is a process of research, creating and making it like a communication, like building a language where, the message that I want, or the non-message that I want to deliver, like it comes through. But like
Yeah.
this first thing is like, it's me wondering about things that happen in my life that I even don't control. It's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So,
I think that also here again comes the combination of things, like, and the combination of works. In an artistic success, I remember that I heard Asaf Avidan when he put out the album Gold Shadows,
Mhm.
which was not my favorite album of his, but I've been listening to his music like the whole career, and I read about the album, and he said that it was the first album that he was mature enough to create intimately to the masses that listen to him. And what does it mean? He said this album is about breakups. And I was both already musically, I felt confident and I felt that I'm ready to play. I'm not only proving myself. Second of all, I was for the first time in my life in a healthy, a good relationship, and I could go back. And what he did, which is quite crazy in my opinion, but he went to all of his breakups throughout his whole life and he interviewed them, and he used this material for songs, which is, again, so this is, I would say, like, creatively, he created a ground for himself to create something that was very meaningful. And I think this is the most successful thing in art. But, for example, in the teaching, COVID started, and with the teaching, we had, our inboxes were full, and we were like, okay, we can so easily shift this thing online. And then in our circle, we start talking, but like all this online work feels very, a bit too capitalistic, because it's even more strengthening this giving knowledge, it's pay, money for knowledge, like a bit too direct. So we said, okay, if we're going to go down the online road, we need to balance this capitalism with contribution. So we did 2 workshops that were like this really big fundraisers. One of them for U Day, which is it's kind of like the UNICEF of India that takes care of homeless people, and I think we managed to raise something like 1,000, 2,000 euros. And then another one after the explosion in Lebanon.
Mhm.
But also we decided to raise a little bit of a higher, we managed to raise higher sum from teaching to this cause. So, for example, with the teaching, that is a bit more of something that there's a different type of success, because it's more based on an exchange of, knowledge and then the value of the knowledge. Then the success is to be able to use it for living and contributing, at least in our opinion. Success in art is to make it happen in coherence with your integrity. So it's like, and then here, if you think about it, then like, because we have these different paths to say, to be successful, in that sense, in the different paths, not like, so it doesn't mean to be rich or to be famous. It's like, to each type of work that we do that calls for its own success can bring it. This
Find
is
your
very
integrity.
Yeah.
Find your integrity in the way you do it.
Yeah, so I think that in that sense, I totally agree that as an artist, to really have the possibility, the tools, and the space to say something that is true for you, this is success. But there's many things around art.
And the freedom to do that.
But for example, teaching, I think the success is contribution,
Yeah.
A successful teacher is one who contributes.
Absolutely.
Not one who says his truth. That would be
Yeah.
Maybe that's a successful guru, but
Yeah. Okay, so speaking about gurus and successful teachings and integrity and everything, so the people in our community are mostly people, performers, artists, circus artists, most of them, and so they work with their body, and you work with your body. So, do you have any advice to give people from your experience? I mean, advice, I don't know if it's an advice, but it's like a question, because when you, again, it's partakes to the theme of peak performance that I'm so interested in, and there's a lot to say about recuperating after hard physical work. So I imagine you need to somehow deal with that, how in your work, the intensity, the quantity, being hard workers as you are, being very in integrity with what you want to do and what you want to create, and uncompromising about it and rigorous about it. So what do you recommend in terms of recuperation? What works for you when you recuperate physically? Do you have any, tips or thoughts that you want to share about this? First of all, I mean, I'm asking this as if it's obvious, but young artists usually forget to recuperate, which is very bad for their long haul.
I think
So,
there's listening, but not listening. It can sound like a cliche, just listening to the body, but there's different types of listening, because I can listen to the ambition of my body, I can listen to the pains of my body, I can listen to the tiredness of the body, and then I think that a good listener is somebody that listens to all of these things and manage to make a dialogue between these different things that the body says. So not to be kind of dogmatic with I only listen to the ambition, or on the other side, some people, I don't listen to the tiredness, and then they don't have rigor, or I don't listen to pains because I'm that tough. So the ability to listen to everything and make every time reprioritize, that would be, I think, a healthy way of listening to the body in the long term. Then also to remember that the most both in physical work and in creativity, I always believe that the impact happens when you manage to rest from the work that you did. So it's like kind of you work, but you don't feel the impact when you work. You feel the impact after you finished it and you manage to rest. So if you don't rest, there's no impact. Also creatively, also physically. So, but then it's subjective, so you need it sooner or later. How much, this is subjective, connects to the listening. But maybe these two things, this kind of deep listening and reprioritizing, remember that there's many things to listen to, and knowing that transformation happens through cycles of moving and resting. So I think these two things are what dictates, at least for me, my recuperation.
Interesting.
And also maybe not just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So I don't know, I'll try to also keep this in mind. I have enough experience to also see that sometimes when I rest or when I'm not doing, it's not that I'm losing. I feel actually on the contrary, I'm gaining on like very deep knowledge, and also, like, to be honest, I learned hardcore. So I got through an injury, an operation. I think it's also part of the job, not to encourage injuries, but it's very hard when you are really engaged in your practice and you really want to like achieve your vision, to understand that your body has a memory, that everything accumulates, it doesn't go away. And everything that you've been doing, it will resonate. And there is hope. I also think that a good performer or a good dancer, in my case, is not like the one that has more capabilities, but the one that like goes through its limitations. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, that could be, a way to get injured, but but you know.
No, I
But
think she
hopefully on a
doesn't.
long-term basis.
Yeah,
So
but
that you
already
can go through your limitations, but
No,
for
no, no,
years.
it's lost in
no.
translation.
Sorry,
It's
no.
lost in translation. She meant
Oh,
that once that learns about their limitations,
Yes.
not goes
Not
through,
goes through. No, no.
learns about the limitation.
okay.
Because you learn about your limitation,
No, it
And
just,
then you acknowledge
yeah,
acknowledge them.
I said it in a hardcore way because I learned through an injury, and like I learned through like knowing and relearning how to walk and relearning my relationship with the floor because it was a knee injury, you know.
Wow.
And yeah, like and you need to to relearn. And I think that the most shifting way for me, like in my body experience while moving, is like understanding that I have limitations.
Yeah.
I do have them, and I need to respect them.
To respect them and work with them.
Yes,
That's what you mean.
this is what I mean.
Okay. Got you.
just that sometimes you know you have to smash against them. That's maybe the go through them. No?
Yeah.
You need to hit them to, you know, and this is also fine
To realize that you have them.
Yeah, this is part of the process sometimes. And,
Sometimes. Okay, so but you know, injuries is a whole new subject on its own. You know.
I mean, also, like I want to do a disclaimer. Like I don't, I know circus, but I know circus from far, and I don't embody the discipline of circus. So and dance is it's different. Like the way of pushing the body and like what it's demanded from the body, it's very different. So like I don't really wanna like, you know, give lessons to the circus people because like I don't really have the same.
Well, you know, as we already said in previous discussions, we said, you know, that the lines do blur, and sometimes the risks are very similar. You know, the risk of exhaustion of working too much with the body and then exceeding your limits, whether it's up in the air or on the ground. You know, maybe there's an objective greater risk in the air, but the trajectory to get to a limit and to either transcend it by practicing a lot and getting stronger or more flexible or whatever you need, or more disciplined or more in listening to your partner, for example, which is something you work a lot about. You know, it's the trajectory is similar.
But that goes back.
That different.
That goes back to the beginning. That the thing of like, you know, there is a limit. That's kind of the thing. Even if we do creation at dinner, there is an end. You know, and the end, it's very similar to the rigor. One of my favorite fighters, athletes, his name is George St. Pierre. He was a very, you know, doesn't matter, an athlete, a fighter. You know, in one interview, somebody asked him, what was like, how come you were so psychologically resilient? You were always cool, you were always nice, not like other athletes who get. So he said, because I knew that every Sunday, because the fight was on Saturday, that every Sunday I have a family to go back to, you know. So it's like, it's the same with physical rigor. You need to remember that like, you know, the practice is over, then you have to go, you have to cook your food, you have to go to bed, you have to have knees that can carry you from the, you know, like, you need to have hands that like that you can, you know, do the stuff that is mundane, not only the like, you know, big stuff. So in that sense, this is probably what I should have heard earlier in my career, you know, and that helps. People will learn about their limitations regardless. You know, you work with your body, you hit it, but I think you can minimize the number of times that you have to go through them in order to learn about them, and that can be a very relieving lesson to learn.
And I just like to end like the listening that he said, like I also would appreciate more like a bit more of an overlap in between meditation and, you know, to start the practice with standing and meditating, like to just give yourself like these seconds to, or like minutes to reassess, to check your body. How are you today? You know, and then like getting a bit closer to, what you can do, what you cannot do today. You know, because also this these changes. And this, for example, like it's something that in my dance, it was missed. Like I started like directly, bam, ballet class, tandem, a contemporary class, fast. You know, you start like 9 o'clock in the morning, bam. You know, I would like that somehow, like in the practice or in schools, there would be like this. Like it doesn't need to be like a
listening
yoga
practice,
course.
the listening practice.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a yoga class of an hour and a half. It can be just 10 minutes of just like closing your eyes and breathing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys, listen, I think that's our time. I want just to ask you if people in the community want to contact you, be in touch with you, know what you're doing, study with you, see your performances, how do they do that?
I think that the best way is just to, to look in both of our websites, wondergroundcompany.com and movementarchery.com.
Great. So we'll put them together with this interview when we publish it in the community. And well, there's one huge thing that we didn't speak about, which is movement archery.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch that.
I think it was, you know,
Okay.
if we spoke about Wonderground as the ground for creativity, movement archery is the wind and the rain that were like dripping and giving the atmosphere of the whole conversation.
But can you say can you say a couple of sentences, just very, very short, about movement archery, what it is, when you started developing it, etc., etc.?
Well, movement archery is basically the foundations of an artistic movement practice. So it deals with like all of the things that I did in my life and I feel can be taken out of context and help for other things. So it has meditation, dance, acrobatics, partnering, improvisation. You know, that kind of like the 5 things that it's kind of dealing with. And then within these things, what are different connections between them and how these things can either turn into somebody's personal practice or benefit, you know, other types of practices.
Perfect. So when you two teach, basically, this is the system you're teaching is based upon, or it's not a system. What do you call it?
That's the spirit. That's the spirit of what we teach. Since Rosé came, there's much more, for example, I feel that there's much more partnering and creativity as part of movement archery. So it's like since she started collaborating with me on this, it's also a little bit, it evolved, you know, or it changed. But again, we like to think of movement archery as like a big cloud. You know, it's not a structure. It's not a method. Or it's more of an approach. So
approach. Great. That's a good word. Great, guys. Listen, this has been fascinating as ever. And do you have any plans to come to Israel sometime?
Let's see with the borders. That's it's we have to respond to the borders at this point.
Okay.
So,
because you know we have this very nice residency space here that we're building, and
I am sure
welcome.
that once the borders are open, we will come soon to visit you to continue this conversation over a cafecito and to
thank you for taking the time, because you're so busy, and good luck with everything you're doing. And I love you guys and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much
Bye
love.
bye.
Bye.